Hello and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Tonight we are joined by author Lizzy Gayle. I know, right? So let me start off right and let me ask you about discussing what you are going into a trance to enter your character's head. Tell me how that works for you.
That makes it sound so weird. I guess it is weird, but so I am I'm a psychic. I a practicing psychic. So I'm gonna get that out of the way right away. And that I kind of opened to that after I started writing. So the writing came first. But what I didn't realize at the time that I was kind of doing was getting into this, I guess you'd call it a meditative state. And I am a pantser, not a plotter. So, and I've tried plotting, but it does not happen well for it doesn't work well for me. And I get into the character's head. I also have a theater background, so that helps too. And it's almost like, I mean, I'm watching a movie and I'm just recording what's happening as it happens from that person's point of view. So that's my rough draft. Obviously, I edit afterwards.
Well, that's actually interesting, though. Um, well, since we're talking about your characters' minds, let's take a moment and find out more about the Blissful End. This is book 3 in the Dijon series. The
Jane,
Jane. Okay,
Jen,
Jen. Oh
yeah,
God, my God. The D
I know it can
silent.
be kind of tricky.
The D silent. The Jen. And I told myself when I wrote this too. This is why I try not to do two things at the same time. Um, so, tell us how the book came, the series came about, and then tell us about this latest book, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, of course. So at the time, I knew that I love, paranormal because I like reading it, I like writing it, the whole thing. And I had just finished writing a book, a demon angel book, which I actually had out and is no longer available in print, but it was when I was writing YA. And then I said, okay, I want to do something new and I don't want to do the same old characters. And I was trying to think, so I started looking things up. There used to be this really cool site online. I don't think it exists anymore, unfortunately, because this started a long time ago, but I think it was like the Monsterpedia or something like that. Um, and it had all these different paranormal creatures. So I was just kind of thumbing through it and I heard this kind of, character in my head, as writers do. And she sounded a lot like the demon that I had written. And I thought, but that's not right. So I started researching and looking, and I realized, oh, she's a jinn, a jinny. And which for those of you that aren't familiar, the jinn are basically genies. So what we, in pop culture would call a genie. So, think Aladdin or I Dream of Genie or whatever. But then when I started researching what they really are, it comes from the Arab world, and they are very powerful beings, and they can be either, you know, good or bad. They don't have to be always bad or whatever. And they can be captured, which is where the whole idea came from, with the genie in the lamp. And so people would tie them to an object and then they would control the genie or the jinn.
Right.
So that's where the idea came from. And so the first one was Leela, was my first Jenny. And so the Binding Stone, which is the first book, is from her perspective. And it's her story of how she was captured and kind of made into a slave, basically. And there were two other Jen with her from the beginning, and they each subsequently have their own book. And of course, all the characters are in there, but the final book is The Blissful End, which just came out. And it is from the perspective of Mira, who is another Jen. And she is she was really fun to write. So it was good.
Well, cool.
She has less compunction about doing what needs to be done.
Nice. That sums it up pretty
So,
good.
yeah, yeah, I think so.
Now, is
I
this
don't
going to
know.
be the
Use your
last?
imagination.
Is this going to be the last in the series, or do you have any plans to continue on with it?
It It is the last in the trilogy. It's a trilogy. The last one that I had planned. If there was call for it, it's a huge world. Obviously, there's more I could do with it, but for now, I'm putting it on hold and calling that the end, the blissful end. And I working on my other series that is also with City L. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Nice. So, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're working on right now, then, since you mentioned it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I have another series. It is actually sci-fi romance, very spicy. It is with Mystic Owl, which is an imprint at City Owl Press. And the first book is called Love at 20,000 Leagues. And
Oh.
it's the series is called the Fantasy Resort series. So it's basically these fantasy futuristic resorts. The first one is underwater, and obviously from the title, I guess. But it's kind of a mix of genres. Actually, it's part thriller, part mystery as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've gotten good feedback on from readers that they were surprised by that, but they thought it was cool. And the second book is going to be out in August, and that one is called A Matter of Time, and it's actually a time travel resort that goes back to 1888 and gets stuck there. So that's what that series is about.
Well, since we're listening to what type of series you're writing and what's coming from you and next on the next platter, um, I'm most curious to hear about the types of research that you do to create your worlds for your books.
That's a really good question. And I think a lot of writers like to joke about, being on the FBI's most wanted list because of our search history.
Yeah.
And that might apply. I don't know. I sometimes wonder, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I looking up now? Because there is like sabotage, and, in 20,000 Leagues, there's murder, there's AI stuff. The cool thing is, I don't even think he realizes it, but I use my husband. I pick his brain. He's a brilliant guy, and he's a scientist and engineer, and he works on kind of next level technology. So when I'm doing sci-fi, obviously I can kind of like be like, so what, does this exist? What's happening with this kind of thing? And so that's a good resource for me that not a lot of people have. But yeah, I mean, I have researched everything from, like, right now, for example, I just started book 3 in Fantasy Resorts, and that's taking place in unexplored area of Greenland, in
Okay.
the Arctic, kind of. And so the last thing I did was look up pictures, aerial shots, just to kind of get like the lay of the land and that sort of thing, the feel of it.
Right.
But I'm also trying to contact the Inuit tribe that is out there to get some information on the mythology. I want to make sure everything is, appropriate and verified and all that, because I do want to use some of the mythology in it.
Well, that's interesting. So basically, a lot of what you're doing is you focus more on what you can find online about your destinations, correct? Have you ever
Mm-hmm.
found have you ever found that a place that you have went to has enhanced you just felt, oh my gosh, this has to be in a book.
Um, probably more my imagination. I hate to say that. I have definitely used places that I've been. The example would be I lived in Tucson for 5 years, and that is the area. Although the town itself is fictitious, that's the area that I used in the book that's coming in August, A Matter of Time. And I worked at Old Tucson Studios. I did all the like the cowboy stunt show type stuff, and it was so much fun and such a big part of my life that it was really fun to kind of revisit that and use the things that I did know from that time period. in order to build this book. So that was kind of a fun way to do that.
Tell me about your cover work. Now, I read that a piece of fan work became one of your covers. Tell me how that happened.
Oh gosh, that was one of my YA covers. That was I was writing under a different name, young adult, and that's how I started. And I love it when that's like one of my things is that I love fan art. That would be like the best thing ever if people wanted to do that. So I'm just putting that out there. But I, I had I had a book called Winging It, and I had it up on Wattpad for a long time. This was quite a while ago. Um, and then I decided to self-publish it because you know everybody it was great. It got a great reception. But one of the things that I got from one of the fans of it was a cover that they created for it, and I thought that was just so cool. It is unfortunately not the current cover because marketing, but
Ah,
I love it, and that will always be very special to me. So, yeah, that's the story.
well, cool. Well, sometimes I've had a little bit of fan art given to me, and it's like, it's really flattering so much how much work they put into it. And you're like, wow. And the fact that someone loved
Yes,
your work so much that they wanted to actually create a cover version for you, that's awesome. I mean, that's astounding.
it really is. I just am flabbergasted by that, and when it touches people that much, where they really get into it and they see the characters as real, kind of. I mean, that's what it's all about, really, and it makes me so happy when I hear from people like that. So, yeah.
So let's dive just a little deeper into what I read you call your creative spirit. I understand. I know, you like how I phrased it a little bit there. I understand that your journey started a decade ago. You care to share a little bit about how that happened? And I hope I didn't age you too much on that. I swear, I'm only
Oh,
doing what I researched. I swear.
no, it's not a problem.
Okay.
I have no problem with that. Yes, I am what they call a dinosaur, especially on TikTok.
No, no, you're
I am
not.
48 years old, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of it, and it's perfectly fine. Um, and yeah, I started writing professionally over a decade ago now. And I mean, I was writing my whole life, but it was always something that was on the back burner, like, oh, someday I'm going to do that. Well, I had been a stay at home mom, and I decided that, it was time to get a job again. And it
Mm-hmm.
had been like a decade at that point. And I thought, I was applying for jobs, and I was kind of like, every time I put in an application, I was like, oh God, I don't really want to do this. And I wasn't getting a lot of, interest because not a lot of people want somebody who hasn't been working for 10 years. And I thought, instead of doing this, if I'm going to get rejected anyway, I might as well be doing what I love.
Right.
So I decided to sit down and treat it like a business and learn the whole thing. Learn, the craft, learn the business side, and all that. So I did. And I gave myself goals that I set, and I treated it like a full time job. And lo and behold, I was able to get my first agent, who was a fairly big agent at the time, probably still is, and not too long after that. So I was very lucky. And once I started, like my big thing was, can I write a whole book? Can I write a novel? That was my question. And as soon as I did one, it was like the floodgates opened, and I just could not stop writing. It was like everything from all those years pent up. And my friends would tease me. They'd be like, "Oh, I blinked and Lisa wrote another book." And so we still joke about that, but it's good because that's why I'm able to put out, so many. And uh, it's so it went from there. I have had two agents. We've split amicably, but my own personal journey, I've found that I'm happier in a happier place with the small press. That's my
Okay.
happy spot. So I don't really need that at this point. And I'm also doing adult now. I was doing YA, as I said, for years. I had, I don't know, maybe 7 books published
Nice.
before that. I think so. I'd have to sit there and count, and I'm not going to do that right now. But but then I switched to adult, and I'm using the name Lizzy Gale, which I love. And it's very freeing and a lot of fun because I can write very spicy stuff, very dark stuff, and it's okay. So
Right. So,
that's where I am right now.
when you were writing the children's books, were they full novels, novellas?
Full novels,
Okay.
and I had a trilogy, The Demon Angel, one I was talking about, Soul Crossed, and that was with Full Fathom 5, and I have the rights back, but I haven't done anything with it at the moment,
Oh.
which is bad, you know. And then I self-published a couple. I have one that's a horror YA that is with Burroughs, I believe, called The Gallows House. Yeah, so all over. But I mean, I've done everything from poetry, and I'm talking like kids' poetry. Think, Shel Silverstein style
Hmm.
or Dr. Seuss style poems and magazines and stuff, all the way through, um, you know, extremely spicy adult romance. So I've done like kind of the whole gamut.
Right. What do you what
I
between
guess I
the
grew up.
between the differences in genres, which do you find harder? And I know that some people might say, "Oh, well, it could be the adult," but writing for children can be difficult as well. So how do you figure which
Oh,
one would you weigh? Which one have you found that is a lot harder, and you know what I mean, in writing it for the particular
yeah,
specifics?
no, that's a great question. And people, a lot of people do. They think, oh, look how easy it must be to write a picture book. I'm going to go do that. But
Yeah.
I am here to tell you that is like the hardest thing in the universe. I will never be able to write a successful picture book. I have tried and failed, and I'm okay with that. Um, I give great kudos to those who can do it. It is definitely an art form. Yeah, children's is harder because there are more limits on vocabulary, for example, on depending what age group you're talking
Hmm.
about, of course. Um, I liked YA because it was sort of the sweet spot of you're not limiting anyone because you know you don't talk down to teenagers, they think for themselves.
Right.
And a lot of people make that mistake, unfortunately, but that's a big one, let me tell you. And so that was really good. But then I prefer the adult now because, like I said, it kind of opens everything up, and you don't have to worry about gatekeepers or you know any problems within. You know,
Right, I get you.
yeah, but yeah.
I think I would think the choosing the right words for the age groups would be the most challenging. I really do. But I see what you're saying about the YA because that would open it up a lot more. You know what I'm saying? Because their vocabulary is a
Yes.
lot grown, you know? And
Yes. No, definitely.
and usually
Yeah.
they
And
tell us what
again, over
they know.
50%.
Usually teenagers tell us what we should know. You know, hey, don't you know this
That
word?
is true.
So
It's
with
all true.
well, right. So with plotting, I read that you say your characters do as they want. Explain that to me.
Again, I think that's common among writers, but yeah, they do. I'll think, oh, how am I going to get out of this? Like, that doesn't work. But I keep writing, and then the character does something completely unexpected. Um, it sounds crazy unless you are a writer, and then you get it.
Right.
Um, so it's yeah, it's one of those things where that's maybe why plotting just doesn't work for me because they're like kids. I mean, I have 3 kids, so I know, but they're kind of like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that because you want me to. That's not how I would act, so um, but then somehow it always works
Whoops.
out. And I don't know if it's my subconscious or what, but it's somehow it makes everything work, like what they decide to do.
Right.
Um, there was a character who got killed off, unfortunately, but it happened. It was such a surprise that not only did it take me by surprise, but it took my main character by surprise because if we had known, then we probably would have stopped it from happening.
Yeah.
Once it was down on the page, I was like, oh, yeah, that did have to happen. So,
Right. Well, our timer went off, but I want to ask you one final question. Occasionally, I like to find a phrase you've said, my guest, and that happens to be you. So occasionally, I like to find a phrase, something that you've said, and find out what you meant by it. Is it okay if I quote you?
sure, I'm a little scared, but go ahead.
No, no, it's nothing bad. I swear. I swear. Um, so I want to know what the quote means. Um, write what scares you. What exactly did you
Um,
mean by that quote?
okay, so that is my favorite piece of writing advice.
Okay.
I've seen it many places, but it came to me from Libba Bray, who I just absolutely idolize. And to me, what that means is free yourself. Don't try to second guess. Don't try, turn off your internal editor. Um, if you're afraid to go there, either in subject matter or style or tone or anything like that, do it, because how else are you going to grow? If you don't try it and you don't get out of your comfort zone, and that goes for anything, it doesn't even have to be writing, then you're never going to grow. You're never going to move on and learn and keep going, because whatever you do, you should never get to that point where you just feel like, yeah, I'm as good as it's going to get, because there's always more.
Right. I can get
So that
behind
needs,
that. I can get behind
yeah.
that. I want to thank you so much for being on the program, even going through my little editing errors here. So, my apologies. Sometimes trying to do a new platform is a little more challenging. Um, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there and we're going to keep growing. That's my plan. And I want to thank you so much for trying to
Absolutely.
grow along with me tonight, specifically.
Oh,
You were
thank you. Thank
you,
you for having me. I
oh,
really appreciate
it
it.
was a pleasure. You were spectacular. You are a generous person. You were very giving to me tonight for putting up with me. So I greatly
Oh,
appreciate it. Um,
not a
I
big,
go ahead. Sorry, I didn't even interrupt you.
no, no, I was saying it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I'd love to have you back on. You, like I said, your books seem awesome. Your cover work is fantastic. I wish that I could show images in the room because people would not believe how great and glorious and colorful they are. So please come back anytime. We'd love to have you. I want to thank everybody for listening. Again, a couple weeks ago, we reached over 1K downloads and we are continually growing. And like I said, we were offered to be a part of different platforms, which we will try to get accomplished, I promise to you, because I want to bring everyone that comes on this show to higher avenues and open you up to different places where you will be heard and your voice will be given wings to fly out there on the media with. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you every night that you come in. It is such an honor to be with you. Have a great evening, everyone. Talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye bye for now.